boy. Here we are.
A couple seconds of silence.
Yay, Mike.
On related note, Nathan, on the topic of farts, just it's I get to have a fart story now because Django always has the fart stories. But I made dinner for a 6 and a 2-year-old respectively this evening because we're babysitting Sam's brother's kids because they're making another baby thing. And
They're making another baby.
They're at the late stages of making a baby.
Okay.
I was gonna say, I've done many a thing for my older sisters. I don't think I've ever babysat while they were trying to create another one.
We need to go in.
I don't think
there's a very small window.
Just made me think of Michael Scott when he's like, "What did you like about your relationship with Jan?" Well, right towards the end of having sex.
But yeah,
I was.
If I've ever been
babysitting
for that reason, I thank Carrie and Alicia very much for never mentioning it to me.
So what do you got, Figley? Tell us.
Well, I was just gonna say that I was making the young girl who's 6 laugh very, very hard, and then I bumped my elbow and pretended to start crying, which made her laugh, and then I pretended to be in so much pain that it caused me to fart, even though it was just that I was gonna fart, and I was a celebrity in that home for like the 3 minutes after that. It was big. It was a big win. It was a big win for Jeff.
You hacked the children.
Nice work.
You'll learn though that once you do something that kids love, they will want you to do it again and again and again. For the rest
Is it too much to allude to The Office again when Andy starts making a fool of himself in front of Will Ferrell in later seasons? Does anyone remember that part?
Oh
he
yeah,
has to pour hot coffee on his crotch.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's up in no time.
I have a long-standing theory that the writers of The Office are just parents because everybody just acts like children. Like Kevin, you could just watch Kevin and they just watched my children and wrote Kevin and Oscar and Angela fighting with each other.
Sam got me an enamel pin of a cartoon version of Kevin covered in his own chili and like the empty chili pot because that's like my favorite scene in all of The Office is like the sad Kevin who spilled his chili. Oh, it's the best. It's the best.
Well, it's a good thing that we've established that everybody's got a pretty good sense of humor here because the book that we're talking about, East of West, Volume 4,
is hilarious.
Okay, fine. You're right. It's hilarious.
Fucking riot. It's a fucking riot.
A serious riot.
My internet is lagging or something. Django, am I freezing or anything?
You seem pretty smooth to me.
Pretty smooth.
Yeah.
Periodically,
I mean, you're also normally pretty smooth. So.
Thank you.
That was smooth.
Yeah. What's up, smooth boy?
Smootsy. It's a smootsy. It's like an alcoholic fruit smootsy.
I have to go get better headphones because my AirPods aren't working. So I won't be back, but
get it.
You guys can continue.
Mike, how are you?
I am okay. My 1-year-old woke up at 4:00 this morning, so I'm sedate.
I don't know how
fart jokes.
Poking her in the belly today just kind of got a whole bunch of laughs. So she's easy to entertain at times.
Did you show her anything you were reading to calm her down?
She was reading some comics that I was reading on my phone, but no.
She doesn't have nightmares, does she?
I don't know how parents do it. This just like 2 days of babysitting a 2 and 6-year-old has been. I'm just like, all right, thank God I have to go record a podcast, or thank God I have to go do a book club, or I had to go to work today. Yeah,
you have encapsulated it. Like, thank God I have to go poop. Thank God I have to go get coronavirus at the grocery. It doesn't matter. It's just not that.
Yeah, I know. It feels so weird, like going into the bathroom just to sit down and look at your phone for like 8 minutes. And I'm like, why am I treasuring 8 minutes? Like, this doesn't make sense at all.
Full on dad.
Welcome to parenthood. This is why I have to order books from you guys every week, because it keeps my kids busy for like a few minutes.
Okay. So we're a babysitter for you. That's what this is.
Yeah.
Is that a Zelda shirt or a East of West shirt? We can only see the top.
I gotta just flip my camera over, and it plays both ways.
Okay.
Gosh.
Well,
okay.
hot dog, have we had ourselves a freaking trade here?
Yeah, this issue had it. So it started with the world, right? Which is something that was in the end of the hardcover that Jeff and Wynn were reading. And I was glad to. I never really look forward to reading that kind of an issue because it's so many words and you have to track dates. It's all the hard parts of history for me, and I ended up really enjoying that issue.
Hickman knows how to put together an informational little packet there.
Yeah,
he sure does. Although I was confused that they put like the 6 pages of story right before it started in the paperback.
Yes,
that was weird.
Oh, is that where are those pages from?
Presumably the beginning of issue 16, but like in the hardcover, the world is just at the end, and it's not preceded by 5 pages of like war and the horsemen taming that big dumb guy.
So
interesting.
Right before the world is the last page, the drinking of the skull page.
No.
Okay.
Wait.
No.
That's after the world in this.
Yeah, Conquest getting his mount is the
okay.
the right.
And then the forward to Babylon bit.
Yeah. So basically, the world is in the middle of what, issue 15?
That's like the middle of, or I think that's the beginning of issue 16.
Yeah.
Okay.
I liked it.
Yeah. It was just
very
a
interesting.
weird publication method is all.
I'm now missing that because that's not the way it's set up in the hardcovers, obviously.
Yeah.
Well, I think for me, I would have had a really hard time jumping straight into blocks of text and having a little bit of a chance to ease back into the world and get this kind of humorous situation with the horsemen, and then be dumped into a lot of history and a lot of reading and kind of mathing out years and trying to figure out when things I've already seen had taken place. And then going back to that story, I thought that it was nice bookends.
And some things we hadn't seen yet, like the conquering of Texas that you read about in the Texas blip, and then I was like, this is gonna happen soon, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, that was kind of the cliffhanger in a couple issues ago.
Yeah. And so that was a fun reveal of like, it happened when you weren't looking, and then you kind of just see a little bit more exposition about it. That was fun.
Yeah.
Well, and then some stuff that seemed to be jumping ahead even more in Armistice. The return of the Pilgrims, then came the Prophet Orion, and people coming to hear the Prophet Orion speaking. That seems to have not happened yet, even by the end of volume 4.
Yeah.
I gotta say though that like this page is one of my favorite visuals in the entire comic up to where I have read thus far. Like, I think that they used like that visual as like cover art at some point earlier in the series.
Okay.
But just like this freaky dumb dude who like Conquest's whole thing about like the meat want to be conquered.
Right.
Like, I just love this page and how Pestilence and War seem understandably a little freaked out by their sibling.
I think that what that really was an excuse for Nick Dragotta to draw another Grimace. He heard that people weren't seeing enough Grimace here.
It was new teeth, though. I liked that. Well, I guess less lips is all it really was.
Yeah.
And they continued there on a more serious note. I like that they just continue to feed us differences between war and conquest. It's just fun to continually hear that there's differences in all of that, and it's cool.
Yeah, the interpersonal stuff between the horsemen, I think, is very, very interesting in this book.
Gosh, his cut off foot. So many cut off feet.
And
best scene in the whole thing so far was the freaking dance. The shooting dance. That
was awesome.
That felt like something I hadn't ever properly experienced in a comic before. This page. Well, there's a page on either side of it, but that was absolutely my thing.
There's a few of them, and I think if we kind of go through the whole thing, there are these very cinematic sequences in all of
Yeah,
when,
the hump scene.
When Death
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Jalen?
Jalen.
Jalen are
Mrs. Death.
getting it on.
That was.
I loved that reveal back of just, oh, this is in front of everybody.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I love
And then-
Crow. Like,
And then Crow is like,
Wolf,
no
rather.
one wants to see this,
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah. Yeah, that was very cathartic.
Drawn by Dragotta, I do want to see it. It looks
Right.
very pretty. I love his style. And I love how well that's drawn, and like it doesn't feel voyeuristic, and even when we realize that, oh, okay, they're, like you said, doing this in front of everybody, like
it feels exactly as voyeuristic as the onlookers are feeling in that moment, but not, the kind of voyeurism of the audience.
Yeah.
We are.
And I do really like also like how that's played off against the fight that Wolf is having, where like it's a mock fight compared to sexy times.
Yeah. Do you think there's a metaphor that they were directly getting at between the two of them? Like, was it a staged fight or they were just having a mock fight? Then
I mean, like, I got the impression that like the people outside the tent were really just training, so like maybe it's just like a similar energy thing?
I was
think
like,
they're sparring, but it represents like a physical intimacy, but also an undertone of conflict.
Because I mean, how many movies have you seen where the like main character and their love interest get like into a sparring match that ends with them like, making out or nearly kissing?
Yeah.
I like
it's why Django and I had to stop fighting.
Yeah.
At least in
shirts at all times now. I like that. The thing that makes them stop fighting is, I think, when they realize that the message is coming true in front of their eyes. Right.
Did you think that they realized that?
That didn't occur to me.
Oh, our leader is naked. Because the voice, the boxes that are the narrator. Disclosure, it's been like 3 weeks since I initially read through this volume, but
I think it is the realization. I think the narrator is supposed to represent the top panel, which is us / Wolf seeing that. Because would Wolf know it, and would these
Wolf might know the message?
These Braveheart guys? No. What movie is it from? Wilson / what other movie am I thinking of?
Castaway.
Well, Castaway, yeah, but there's some other war movie where that's happened.
I think there's a handprint on
the Urukai.
Yeah, are you going for like a Saruman vibe here, man?
I guess that's you're right. It is Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I didn't interpret that as them being aware of it. Just it says what followed was, and I could totally be wrong, 100%, but it says that what followed was of the times. It was the message, and that isn't quoted from anybody. So maybe they.
But why else would they have to be so? What's the purpose in their surprise so much? Just
I thought through why they were so what is the significance of their shock? So it could have been the message thing, or just like the shock of those two are doing that thing, and they seemed really angry at each other last time we were checking.
And bear in mind, that's their leader, their supreme leader is naked in front of them, and
Hickman just is usually making us hit feelings that we either aren't comfortable with or don't always have, and that just if that top panel really is just supposed to see, whoa, there's my president's butt, I guess that could be, and that would be really jarring.
Wasn't it in volume 2 or 3 that she actually presented herself completely nude to her armies? I feel like that's a pretty normal thing in this culture. I don't.
I think I think you're right. I think that was in volume 1.
Yeah,
volume 1 even.
I think it can be both, though, in the sense that it can be for those characters, it's the shock of seeing them in such an intimate situation. I think that more than the nudity, but it also parallels the what is being said in the commentary in the boxes.
Yeah, I really liked that chapter ended by telling us that after this they're not going to see each other again.
That was heartbreaking.
Yep.
I hope that there's a way out, like a technical lie there.
Well, so that made me think that in the final issue of this volume 19, as it gives us the credit shot, there's somebody has been hung, like the silhouette is somebody being hung, and it looks a little bit like death, but maybe not.
Wait, where?
Just on this page.
Oh, on the beginning. Okay.
Yeah. So for 19, and it's probably not death, but it was just
No,
on
it's
my
not.
mind.
It's the one that they thought was the Texas Ranger, and I thought
Okay,
it was
so-
Death the whole time.
Yeah,
but
that
it's
was
the
just a
same
weird
silhouette.
callback to the scene from a couple issues before then.
That's a great point. Yeah, I don't know why that is a callback because yeah, that's definitely the person that
Was next to Belle.
yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, the ending that scene with the admission that they aren't going to see each other again is a bummer because I super didn't like. There was enough like loss between Death and Xiaolin that I didn't actually take seriously the idea that they would rekindle their relationship at all.
Yeah.
Do you root for him?
I do root for them, but I just like,
Same.
yeah, like really sad,
Hashtag
regretful.
ship
Yeah. Like, I regret is the thing I
It
can.
So much extra weight too, because they had just this tender moment too before they departed, and she's even tearing up and everything. Yeah, to think that there's how many more volumes to go, and they're never going to see each other again. You're 100% right. Like it's heartbreaking, and a lot of their relationship kind of, I don't know. This was the most Game of Thronesy feeling kind of issue to me. And their relationship reminded me a lot of Khaleesi and Khal Drogo.
Mm-hmm.
And their relationship obviously ended very early on in the series, but carried resonance throughout the entire.
Yeah, we sort of spent the whole series in the shadow of that relationship.
Yeah.
So we did just kind of skip right over the gun dog's cloaca.
Okay, so we got to talk about the gun dog's cloaca. I was thinking about, cloacas in general earlier today, but then that dog just made that. I'm amazed at how well personified that dog is, or like, it's just like, I was like, you dog, you gotta
as to why we've decided on cloaca for identifying that orifice.
Sometimes Django says the thing.
Like, it's a fun word to say.
Yeah, it's a fun word. We all like the word.
That's fair.
Yeah, no, like the amount of like humanizing or like that went on just in that scene. Like, I really like that dog. I think I'm just a animals and fiction type of person, and I didn't really realize how deep it goes.
And when the way that the ranger saves Belle by waiting for the rope to go just taut enough to shoot it and save him from being hanged, like that was, I like that a lot.
It was super well told because I thought just as strongly that maybe he's just gonna kill him himself right then because we know he's on his list.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a really like an instance of the medium working really well.
Yeah, like, and also it just felt like something you would see in like an old Western too, like the whole like, the character nearly getting killed and then at the last second the rope gets cut.
Right.
Oh yeah, that's classic Western. I'm also noticing with the dog when it's laying the mines, little bombs, little limpet mines,
little explosive turds.
Yeah, well, which is We 3.
Yeah,
if you remember We 3, the rabbit had a similar thing.
So if everyone wouldn't mind explaining something to me that I'm just forgetting, what is in Belle Solomon's brain?
It's
like a piece of that monster that
the Cheveo infested monster.
Cheveo summoned a monster to chase Belle Solomon down at Armistice.
Okay, it was at
tendril.
Armistice.
Yeah, a tendril kind of was wrapped around his neck, and it presumably downloaded a piece of Cheveo's consciousness.
Okay, I kept thinking it was from the instance when Cheveo summoned the like monster when he died, and I was like, but Belle wasn't there.
Belle just keeps narrowly escaping.
Yeah, he does. Cheveo's like motivation throughout this has been hard for me to like fully understand like why he's still hanging out as this consciousness echo and asserting an agenda that seems to be, you know, just sort of an actor of chaos or something often. But yeah, I'm trying to understand like where his allegiances or motivations.
You
Right
might
now,
just
it
be
feels-
screwing with him.
My
Yeah, that's what it
assumption
feels
has
like.
been that he's like the person most avidly trying to make the message actually be carried out.
Okay.
Maybe after Orion, but yeah.
Because he's also there later with Babylon, helping them in the flashback.
I thought that
Right,
was Uncle Kentucky Fried.
No, Cheveo's there too. He's
Yeah,
the
yes,
one like
both.
Oh, I thought
providing
you were
the
saying Bell
technology.
was there. Okay,
Because they
sorry, I
reference as
misunderstood.
well. Yeah, they reference as well that Cheveo supplied the technology. that
Yeah, smuggled it out of
fluid.
the Endless Nation.
That's what it was. Okay, yeah. I was trying to go find whatever that reference was.
The Endless Nation sequence near the beginning when they conquer Texas, like that
Mhm.
whole like their cubes and they stack into these giant like totemic poles is iconically incredible.
And I just love the panel with the shattered helmet with the execution guy being like, bear witness to this, the manifest destiny of the Endless Nation. I just thought that was very powerful
Yeah.
wording, and I was just like, that's
It made me wonder
that's a
what
lot and good.
their sort of ultimate interest is, because there's like Cheveo who really wants the apocalypse to happen, but I don't get the sense they just want to take over the whole, you know, what's left over of America, but they definitely want to be left alone.
Yeah, like technology, like what is the motivation of technology in this? Is you know, like they seem to have bonded with technology in some way, but they're like again that like that bang or it was mentioned at the beginning, like when something happens, that bomb shows up and it seems to be the introduction of like advanced technology in the world. Yeah, it seems like
Yeah.
there's
But we're not sure how that causally happens. Like
right.
the Endless Nation kind of formed and isolated itself, and something happened with them that made them just jump light years ahead in technology. And I think, you know, at some point, I hope it will be revealed what that was. If there was, you know, some agent that was providing them with that, at least the inspiration for that technology.
Mm-hmm. I really like the part in the world where they talk about how they were selling technology to two teams in order to kind of test their stuff on the battlefield, and then they use it on everybody.
Right.
I thought that
On
was
that
super
note,
cool.
isn't this just kind of the antithesis of Native American in our universe? It's
Mhm.
a flex. It's pride.
Right, well, and that's why Cheveo is kind of the outcast from that, and Crow as well. Not Crow, Wolf.
Yeah.
They're the kind of outcasts from the Endless Nation because they hold to the old ways and, to a degree, the old standards of what their culture means.
Sorry, my internet cut out for a second. If I was like interrupting someone, I didn't
No, you're good.
know what was happening.
To
You're
your
good.
previous point though, Mike, I feel the same way. Like while reading this, I was like, I really hope this sort of history of technology's role in this is explored, because I started to feel like it could just be that they'll like tell the story and not necessarily worry about inciting incidents. And I really hope that they do, because I'm very excited.
Oh, and the fact that in the world is, I think Django, you were saying that because the Endless Nation was selling their technology, but not their best technology, but
Mhm.
a lot of their technology to kind of all of the sides in on the continent. That means that all of the advancements in technology, all of what you see in this universe is this, you know, very advanced technology. That's all coming from the Endless Nations. Ultimately, that's the
Mhm.
source of why their technology is so advanced. So yeah, so there has to be like a one reason why that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to know it.
As far
I'm
as
excited.
motivation, though, like I said, I can't tell if this actually went through because everybody froze for me. But as far as motivation, isn't it this in part just him kind of showing us an antithesis of what Native American culture is here? And this is power for the sake of having power, even in seclusion, and just basically this flex of like we kind of do whatever we want and we mess with two other nations. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that means we can figure out what Chevelle wants, but in a little bit of this Endless Nation exposition, I just kind of feel like it's exploring as if people were in a completely different world than they were in our universe.
Well, I think that's kind of what the when he says the manifest destiny of the Endless Nation, I think that's kind of saying exactly that. Like, we're going to turn this kind of colonialism on its head, and here's what it is.
Or when the shaman gets killed and they're like, our lives are worth so much more than yours.
Yeah.
In a similar vein, that was one thing that really interested me about the world, is how the Confederacy bases its power solely pretty much on economics and having all of them. Like, they just export and import everything. I think that's I thought it was super interesting that they seem to have a really large role in controlling who has how much money, in the same way that the Endless Nation has control of who has how much technology.
Well, but the kingdom also is playing with money by loaning it out really aggressively to kind of protect themselves in an economic way, which I thought I like. I just like how sneaky that guy is. He's politically untrustworthy, and he's just going to do what he wants to do.
Yeah.
Including shooting his brother's foot off over and over.
Really? Again?
Yeah, that whole sequence was really beautiful, and then to sort of cap it off with a joke, I thought was super well done.
I liked seeing the other brothers as well. I assume the other brothers all on the firing range. While he's just kind of in the bleachers above them, chatting with the vizier. And because he doesn't need to engage with them in the same way. He knows that he's above them, like literally.
Yeah.
That whole scene, in a sense, I told you that my favorite was that cinematic sequence of them dancing and shooting, but that whole scene was definitely up there for things I felt like I was watching this on a screen and really feeling like all aspects of senses, and just felt like I was there. Felt like I had every feeling elicited that I was supposed to. I thought that was just super well done.
We haven't talked about the Beast Boy at all yet.
Babylon.
Another one of my favorite visuals.
Oh, yes.
That was a fantastic one.
Lord, I know.
How does he draw so many ways? It's incredible.
Yeah.
His
Because he only draws this book.
Yeah, that's true.
But like,
is it controversial to say he's bad at faces and good at everything else? Like, his faces are weird, but his art in general
we have
is
discussed,
awesome.
like his tendency for the sneer grimace.
Yeah, and yeah, he's got a consistent uniqueness. You know, like it's a style for sure. Like, I don't know if I love it all the time. I think it suits like different people better. Different, like his kids. There's like a weird like childishness to a lot of his faces, and the eyes seem like very sort of like anime influenced and large. It is.
Yeah, he kind of draws old people and children.
Yeah.
Really. And
whatever
you're
this
not old
is,
and you're not
like,
a child.
That isn't like, I get the feeling that you're trying to get across, but I don't really know what that face is, and it that takes me out of it.
I got the same
for a
issue
quarter
with
of a
just
second.
kind of like the kind of, I don't know, like it doesn't look great to me, but then you flip to like this child, like you said, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
Did you like that page, Will?
This page?
Yeah.
It's only the third or fourth time that it's been shown.
It's kind of, I don't know. It's really off-putting, but I keep flipping back to it for some reason.
But something strangely erotic about it. I hate to say it, but
it's
like
a good
there
page.
was.
I think you're seeing him like he's got this little mohawk now, and in like I think volume 2 or volume 1, they have War like reminiscing and kind of wishing he was in the previous incarnation where he was a woman, and there's a little bit of a femininity in him there now. Kind of shedding the kind of petulant boy image, and yeah,
I totally agree. I like there is a I like that shot.
Figley.
What's that?
That was your chance.
What?
from
Oh, grip it and rip it. Yeah, okay.
Hey, that's a different podcast.
Win could have had me too.
But Emily, you did just sort of highlight. We all sort of were like, yeah, or at least most of it. You know, I mean, it is weird. I really like the art, and a lot of times the faces are great, but also there's times where I'm just like, yeah, maybe the weakest tool in the toolbox is the general face.
So what do you think about that?
Some wacky expression.
Like, how does that leave you when you're reading a book that presumably you like if you're here, but the faces, which are the, you know, and oftentimes the best way to connect with the feelings of what's going on, you're not a big fan of. How does that actually sit with you then?
I feel like he still gets the idea across. I feel like this is controversial too because I love Kelly Sue, but I couldn't read what's the one with Death and the Rabbit?
Pretty Deadly.
Yes, thank you. Because a lot of time I just couldn't tell what was going on from the art, and I just like gave up. Even though I could tell like this is good, I don't know what's happening. Like at least in this, it still gets the idea across, even if I'm like that guy's eye is a little high.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, he does just such good spreads when there's action. Like I kept making my husband look like this is so cool. You don't even know what's going on, but it looks really awesome, you know?
Yeah, like I'd say like the rest of the book is so strong that, you know what? You can get away with not being like great at, you know, just regular faces.
Yeah,
like
in the industry as well, you've got lots of people who really make their bread and butter on being consistent, and sometimes that means they have like 3 faces that they only ever draw. Like John Romita Jr. has like 3 faces that he draws.
Yeah. Hot take, Win.
He seems to really have trouble
with
the eyes being lined up, and I think that's probably why Death got an eye patch. It makes it a lot easier for him.
Oh yeah. You're on Reddit and you always see people like drawing faces, but it's always one eye and then something obscuring it, so that no one ever has to draw. Yeah, exactly.
There's an artist that maybe you guys don't automatically think of it that like purposefully draws eyes not in the same level, and it's like whoever drew Little Bird or something like that, like a big 2019 book. Does that come to anybody's head right away or no?
Ian Bertram?
It's maybe not Ian Bertram. I don't know. I'll think of it and say it, but I feel like it's actually purposeful in like the way they write. They're off kilter a lot of times, and that was big time.
Dude, that page with the moon and the bombs.
So is there anything unique about the moon? I don't know enough about the moon visually to.
There's no man in it.
Okay.
There was something in the timeline about the moon.
Didn't was it the Endless Nation sent landed on the moon?
Yeah,
1978.
And then are these bombs? They're bombs all over there?
I'm not sure if they're bombs because they look like the balloon guys.
Right.
I think they're the Endless Nation's little balloons looking for them.
Yeah.
Okay.
I took that as a search party.
It almost looks vaguely like North and South America to me, with like splashes of like explosions on it.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. That's interesting. There's almost like a Florida-looking thing over here.
Did you guys say 1978?
Yeah.
What's the point of that being later than when we did in our world, and this is supposed to be so much more technologically advanced? Why would they have?
Why would they didn't get technologically advanced
or
as quick?
None of the political reasons to do it.
Exactly. There was no.
Mike, stop solving everything.
Well, it actually comes back to Deadlands, Nathan, if you want to. That was good.
So yeah, the last it's almost 2 or 3 issues at the end are about the little Babylon Beast Boy balloon buddy.
This is a heartbreaking page.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's walk through this with me, if you wouldn't mind. So we had the balloon, and it was programmed by Cheveo originally. Mm-hmm. And the motivation was to be essentially forming the beast into a person that that fit what they wanted.
Forming a beast forming a person into the beast.
Because they were trying to create him into the beast. And then when Orion showed up, he changed the programming of the balloon to give the beast choice. So to not force him to be the beast, but give him the option. But then does it seem like the balloon is in fact not obeying that new programming and is still adhering to the previous programming and trying to force
new programming? It's the SD card was pulled, so like essentially it took off the limiter or whatever. So I don't know why it's motivated to Yeah, I still see what you're saying, but like, yeah, if you got to remember to think that it was pulling away whatever the limiter was to remove the other option.
So it
So
wasn't
now
like
it has both options.
okay, so it wasn't changing the overall
I don't
goal of the
think so,
operating
because they
system.
didn't pull out and put in. It was just pulling the chip out, right? So
Okay.
if you're just pulling it out and removing the option for him to not fulfill the message, still, what's the autonomy of the balloon?
Yeah, I think taking that out also has given the balloon somewhat of a choice.
Dude,
because he talks about how he is still making him the beast because he has this unconditional love for the child. And it's creepy, absolutely. But like, how does an AI like that? I mean, how do we reconcile this?
Well, I think that the AI is finding loopholes in what it's supposed to be doing. And so it's cheating a little bit to help Babylon do things differently than what the bad guy wants him to do. That's how I read it, because he's like, he kills the squirrel for the kid, and then he still has to follow through with his programming and kind of ratchet it up and teach the kid to kill. So like the balloon is learning maybe even faster than the kid right now what the consequences to his actions are.
Right, because it
Yeah,
does
there was a
say...
line I really liked. What was the one? Yeah, tweaked his programming. Yeah, it was something about making him learn rather than teaching. Yeah, originally I was supposed to teach you things. Now you're supposed to learn them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So creating the situation. So I guess my question is, does it feel like the balloon is operating in line with anything else or solely of its own volition?
I don't know if the balloon knows which yet at this point.
No,
Well,
I
it's
think
an
it's that the
interesting-
balloon is supposed to like represent the idea that the message is inevitable, or at least the world's idea that the message is inevitable. And I think the balloon is like, even if you take away what's supposed to be making it do what it's supposed to do, what its programming was, it is still going to want to do the thing that is eventual. Is that
Well,
resonating,
Orion's Orion's intention in removing that card is, yeah, his belief that if it's going to happen, it will happen inevitably because of the
he's like
message.
testing his own life's work.
He's testing his own faith. So it's an interesting kind of nexus in my mind between the fatalism that I've talked about before, in terms of, you know, it's an apocalyptic story, it's about this prophecy, things are going to happen and things inevitably happen. But then what we're having in these last couple of issues, all of the stuff at the end of this is exploring free will. And, you know, that's what Orion is trying to give Babylon, is trying to give him free will, but with the idea that he requires free will in order for the inevitable apocalypse to occur. It's a very Christian idea. You know, raised Catholic, I'm going to bring it back around to the kind of contradictions that are inherent within Christian dogma. But yeah, the idea of a predetermined fatalistic universe within which free will exists as a necessary component of that fatalism. It's weird, and it's
I wonder how that works. I don't have the answer to this, but in the world of Christianity, in order for that to work, you have to say that everyone has free will, and that God isn't determining what you're doing. You have free will. He just simply knows what you're going to choose. So in this sense, if the message is kind of like the eventuality, is it just that Orion here is allowing himself to say, yes, I'm creating free will in here, and it's the message is not determining what you're doing, but that eventuality knows which one you're going to choose anyway. And so that keeps it free for anyone to make their own choice, because they're going to make the one that the person who's omniscient, or the message that is omniscient, already knows that is going to be made.
Yeah, it's like that, you know, the duality of, like, you know, destiny or choice. But I kind of think that both exist simultaneously, like, and that seems kind of like that to me, of just sort of like, we don't need to manufacture this, because even with the gift of choice, this is still what always happens. But yeah,
right. And putting a machine in there, putting an artificial intelligence as kind of the guiding force for the supposed free will, puts another spin on it, because it's a machine. It's programmed. It can only behave according to its programming. So,
but its goal is to become us, though, right? So, like, as it moves along, it's trying to be more and more what we originally were. So it's going to emulate the ideas of the same struggles that we have.
I'm super curious. I know I'm coming a little late because I'm popping in on volume 4, but have you guys talked about what you think the apocalypse that they're getting at is? Is it like humans not existing anymore? Oh, well, there you go. And did the final issue come out yet, or just not the final trade?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Cool. So someone knows. I'm not all the way caught up to the
None
very
of us
final
do,
issue.
though.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Even I have only read up to volume 6.
And that's about where I'm at too. And I need to reread because it's very complex. It doesn't really
exactly.
Yeah, I really like the sort of like cyclical nature of the seemingly apocalypse thing. Like I'm not convinced that it's not going to, like, the apocalypse will then just sort of trigger the dawn of a new thing, and we'll be back in this cycle that we've already been doing. Like, maybe this is just a future exploration of time relative to our own reality. Like, maybe this is just like enough, like, things have restarted.
That kind of ties into what I'm curious to learn a lot more about, which is just the Horsemen in general. Because, right, the Horsemen are supposed to signal the coming of the apocalypse, but looking on here, 1958 is the first recorded appearance since 70 AD. So they showed up in 1958, but the apocalypse seemingly didn't come, or maybe it did. And then there's multiple apocalypses, like you said, maybe, the United States as it was ended when they first showed up, or something. And then they die, which I'm fascinated to know more about.
Like, right.
They died in 2055 and then were reborn 11 years later. Like,
yeah, the timing of their reincarnation and how many lives they lived is a thing, I guess, that sort of makes me think about, like, multiple realities or things restarting, like,
and then the gender swap as well. Like, all three of them swap genders on their rebirth from the last.
Maybe the beast did too.
The
cup of a cup.
I have an apocalypse question that is probably less related to this and more in general. So it's a little bit of a chicken or the egg thing. When you have war, conquest, famine, and death, or pestilence and death, or whatever you're saying for that, these 4 in this story are clearly representations of those 4 things. It's not, whether there are 4 horsemen in most mythos or not is, I guess, a side point. But is the apocalypse going to be something where all 4 of them, the 4 horsemen, are satiated? Or is it that when the 4 things are happening, death, pestilence, conquest, and war, that then there will be an apocalypse that we don't know what that is? Which side of it are we to believe that these 4?
I mean, those 4 things are always happening everywhere.
Yeah, traditionally, going Book of Revelations or whatever, it's more the latter. It's more, they get on their horses and ride out, and
they're signalers.
They're the heralds of the apocalypse. Yeah.
Okay. The old Silver Surfers rather than the Galacti. Okay.
I love that the piece of himself that Death left with Xiaolin is a lotus, or sorry, it is a lotus rather, and then the message is a lotus, the death and resurrection of love, and just visual iconography being repeated.
Well, there's death and resurrection again, cycles.
Right. Yeah.
Did Death take the foot with him?
I really like
that. Don't think that they really show us either way.
At some point he was just toting the foot around, though, so you got to think about that.
Right, the question is, did he leave it as a present for Xiaolin?
Yeah, it looks heavy. It's a
he says steel bones.
Steel
I love that idea. I liked that it was steel bones, and that the blue skin and steel bones was what allowed him to identify that it was conquest.
Right.
Which suggests that the other horsemen have different material for their bones.
Locust bones.
I mean, when showing up to a meeting with your wife and you want to rekindle your relationship, one does want to put their best foot forward.
Hey.
Get your foot in the door. Yeah.
Get it. I loved the way that conversation sort of fell out. Like it was very natural to me, and I love the way I'm bummed that Jowlin and Death might not see each other again, because I love the way that they talk to one another. And just the way that, like, well, you said you discovered something else, like, what is that? Or like, you know, I'm sorry I was so angry, and he's like, I'm sorry I gave you something to be angry about. And it's like, I was just like, you two.
What if the apocalypse is Death dying and the other horseman not?
I was about to say, what if Death just loses his other eye, therefore they don't see each other ever again, and they still meet up?
Yeah, Django's technical lie there.
Don't give me hope, though. I like totally ship it.
Yeah. Okay, I'm with
it
you.
does seem like a hard, like, aside from the fact that I don't want it to not happen, it seems like a hard plot device to fill with something else, because the things that we feel out of their conversations and their interactions, we don't really get a whole lot anywhere else.
But
Which may be
also
okay.
Hickman, I feel like he is want to do a thing like separate two people for the rest of a series at volume 4, like that.
Another 6 volumes.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's not very un-Hickman to me.
Yeah.
It sucks though.
And I think in terms of narrative pacing, if that means that Zhao Lin is going to be able to have her own saga and things that she's doing politically and as a character that are separate from just, oh, she got knocked up by Death one time,
right?
That's good.
Oh yeah.
Good point.
What if she gets the Oracle's eyes
Ooh.
by the end?
What would she do with them? Like, what's your what
put
if
them in her
actually leading
eyes?
to?
Like, just so that they don't ever, what are the words here? They never saw each other again. What if?
Oh,
with
you're
her
still trying to
eyes.
satisfy your little technical lie here, type.
Yeah.
I am here with Django's technical lie. I want it. Team technical lie.
And we're in a book about prophecies ultimately, and prophecies are always full of those kind of loopholes and technically not a lie and all this kind of stuff.
And the meta discussion that is Hickman totally allows for it, because the fact is he's an amazing writer, but he definitely wants to show off, and showing off would be giving us that statement and breaking it while all staying honest.
Yeah. So when we're hanging out with the Beast, we get to see through the child's eyes, and it's usually something horrible, like instead of stones in the brook, he's seeing skulls, and
or it's adorable.
Sure,
like a giant
horrible,
like the horrible things.
In reality, it's adorable the way they're just playing together as well. That is a fantastic scene.
Yeah, it is.
But when he's in the forest, he's in like a forest full of dead trees, and everything's really spooky. And then after the reprogramming, when the boars are attacking, you get some green in the forest. And a little bit later on, like he kills all these wild boars, and he thinks that they're, tentacle monsters. And then a little bit later on, I think he's seeing the baby pig as a baby pig. I don't think he's seeing it as a monster.
Oh yeah, because all of the panels that are red are the ones that you're seeing it filtered through the loom. Generally.
Well, right. In order for that to be
kills
correct,
all the boars.
So we would have to think that the thing that he's looking at, he's seeing something other than a pig, because the way that we see the pig would not be consistent otherwise.
I see what you're saying, though. That
perspective.
You're saying, Django, you're saying, though, that he sees it as a baby pig.
I think so.
I can see what you're saying, and I mean, it kind of goes along with the idea that he has to kill this thing before it's capable of killing him. So he's probably supposed to perceive it as something small and harmless.
And he's also learning, like his awareness, and like he killed these things, and now he has murdered, and he can see murder, the effect of murder. Like his vision is widening through experience.
Also, Balloon Buddy might be lying less and less.
That whole scene seemed a lot like he was lying when he was in the tree.
I mean,
I don't
he
think
even
he was
admits
stuck.
to it. He says
Yeah.
it's possible that portions of the situation were manufactured. It's possible
that
that
wasn't
I
lying.
even released synthesized pheromones into the air, whipping up the beast into frenzy. Like, you know, like that's all leading up to him saying you're gonna have to kill to eat. You're gonna have to kill to survive. And then like that panel of the pig going oink oink. Like obviously it's up to interpretation, but I think that it's just showing them the pig. I mean, with kind of dead, creepy black eyes, but the pig.
And he was starting to question, like, wait, why would land animals have tentacles? Like, he's starting to kind of see through it.
Yeah.
This
sequence of just like red spikes and then just this is the most menacing thing. This just like silver with these blue lines, like it's like Hal from 2001: A Space Odyssey or something. Like it's
and then the close-up of the smiling balloon.
That's
hope for you yet, young man.
Pixelated, of course.
Yeah, why is he choosing to represent himself as a creepy balloon, like with a face? Oof.
This pig, the thing that we're saying he's seeing, right? And we're trying to reconcile that with the idea that now we as the reader are seeing the pig. This panel is the first panel that, if that's his perspective, that doesn't have the little V's and is not pixelated.
It's not pixelated. So I think I might just be wrong.
Well, because I'm that's what I was searching through to see if there were any pixels on that panel, or if there were any panels that are clearly the boy's perspective. There isn't the coding on what I'm realizing is one of my favorite panels, where the balloon is saying, "Oh no, how did that happen? I'm so dumb. How come all these awful things keep happening to good people? God is dead." I love that. But there's no coding on that one, but there is some pixeling.
Okay.
Yeah, I might have just made all that up. I don't know.
Well, I don't know.
I guess the reason it's red might be, just the ridiculous amounts of blood.
Yeah.
Well, or at least a symbolic, because initially it's all of the machine-fed imagery that is red, but the reality is turning gradually more red as the scene develops and he engages in violence, which symbolizes an aligning of their views of the world.
Yeah, like he no longer needs to be forced to see red because he is murdering, and through his experience he's building a paradigm that is choosing to see the world in the horrible way that the machine was forcing him to see it.
Yeah.
I did start to wonder, like, if he was raised to like yucky, creepy, apocalyptic things, why did he think that the like skulls in the river were creepy? Why wasn't he like, oh, I'm the beast of the apocalypse, I love this creepy skull river?
Do we think that he was raised to like those things, or like do we think that he has any awareness of the idea of the beast or what role he plays?
I don't have my copy of Volume 3, but I feel like the balloon told him that the skulls all over the ground were evidence of how evil people were. Right. And so like he's used to it, but I don't think that he was raised to be evil. I think they were trying to raise him to be strong and not respect human life, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, and
he
it
has
kind
to
of
have a. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
I think that kind of goes to the dilemma that Orion kind of correctly identifies as well. That if there's that inversion, if everything is just flipped, then mentally that is not the beast. That is someone who's seeing all of this all the horrible stuff as being really nice, and all of the nice stuff as being really horrible. So yeah, that's not the beast that's going to herald in the apocalypse intentionally. It's a epistemological problem. It's this child does not know what he's doing, but with the border scenes and the attacks, he's being he is starting to know himself what he is doing. He is getting actual agency rather than just being deceived into doing certain things.
Yeah.
Hickman anchors this entire dichotomy by making sure that that the programming that we see is either in common direct congruence with what we think, or is in direct opposition to what we think as the reader. So whatever the programming is supposed to be whatever the average reader's moral compass or good and bad or scary and not scary compass would be. But I don't know what that, if you take that to the next level up and say, what does that mean? That's what I'd be curious about. I'm not sure what that would mean.
What would mean? Like that the kid is seeing opposites?
No, how the congruence and opposites were established in this world. What, like, how does Hickman justify essentially this kid with because plot wise, when we read this, it's much more comfortable to anchor us in the idea that us as a reader see something that's good and then something that's creepy or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But in the story, and especially in Armistice and with Ezra or whatever, and War and Conquest and creepy people and green people and red people, how does he justify that in this world, this boy would have those two specific dichotomies, or that specific dichotomy between those two things?
Yeah, I think you're kind of, you're asking the epistemological problems I was coming up with, which is, you could have raised the child without any of that sort of deception, and to simply just be raised around skulls and, to be fed from skulls in the way that the horsemen are drinking from skulls in the beginning of it, and for that to just be that child's normal. But instead they go to tremendous efforts, or the balloon goes to tremendous efforts to establish a norm that, you're right, is in line with what we think as readers, as an audience, to be good. There are a whole bunch of thought experiments within epistemological philosophy, things like the Chinese box experiment and the bat problem. They're, the problem of, how do you know what is going on in other people's heads? How do you know how other people are experiencing the world? Because all we have to judge on are behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
I am curious too, is how much can you attribute good or evil to the beast? Because it almost seems like he's more of it's a force of nature, and it's more of building up capability, like the power to do this type of thing, versus like being evil, like wiping out the humanity for a reason. I mean, there are parts of that, but it does seem a little bit more focused on like this neutral capability, like giving, like, in training him in all these different martial arts and fighting styles and tactics and all this incredible encyclopedic knowledge of, I mean, he cite someone, like he
Robert
notes,
Frost,
the Robert Frost poem, like he has access to all of this knowledge, and it seems a lot more like neutral. I don't know if that makes sense with your point, Nathan.
I like the idea that he has this sort of like childlike innocence, and then I sort of feel like a desire to do good by sort of maybe the reader's morality. And I like the idea of him sort of blossoming into a positive character, but even in doing so, still being the beast that causes the apocalypse. Because like we're talking about the horsemen who are like, well, they're drinking out of skulls and everything, but in reality, the one who seems to have the real power over what's going to happen is this child. And it's almost just like the trappings, the bells and whistles of evil and how it's portrayed, like really isn't actually as powerful as just the ability of consequence of the action of like, I will cause this thing. So I like the idea of him being maybe a good, or trying to do good, but in it, because of the props of that fatalistic idea of sort of like, you're still going to cause the apocalypse, is I think a cool possibility that exists within that character.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we know what role exactly the beast is supposed to play in the apocalypse.
Right.
It could just be, being in the right place at the right time.
And again, we don't even know what the apocalypse is. We're assuming kind of a negative connotation just because of our cultural norms, but apocalypse doesn't necessarily mean like couldn't be as bad. I don't know.
Is there a role in typical mythos for a beast?
In the Book of Revelations?
The beast in Revelations. Well, the interesting thing is that there's usually an interplay with the beast and the Whore of Babylon, but the beast here is called Babylon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I'm familiar with that part of it, but in like in terms of the Bible, but not in mythos that involve 4 horsemen necessarily, right?
Oh, that's Revelations as well.
Yeah. Gosh, it's embarrassing.
Come on, Nathan.
Sorry, Django.
Aren't you one of those Jesus
I
guys?
spent a lot of time in John.
On a pacing note, while reading this, I really liked the way that Hickman told the sequence of events that happened in like the fall of Texas. That's something that like maybe in a different reality could have been an entire paper back worth of, you know, like following the events that lead to that whole thing. And I really like broad, like succinct, effective broad strokes that can move us forward, and he can get mired in events at times. He's probably my favorite writer, but I really liked the way that he told that sequence of events. That was paced really well in my mind.
What's interesting too, just kind of tying back to the dynamics of like the Endless Nation and it being kind of a, you know, flip narrative, is it's kind of a bit the same with Texas itself. Like, you know, modern day Texas, you know, boasts itself as being an economic powerhouse that can stand on its own, that could be its own nation by itself. And in here, it's, you know, it's got no strength of any you know,
no
type
nation at all
whatsoever, and it falls just, you know, like that.
I realize that a lot of Texas's sort of, you know, economic boasts and whatnot are all stuff that directly came out of the aftermath of the Civil War.
Right.
Yeah, Texas wasn't that rich a country until all of its, well, that rich of a state, until all the rest of the states around it were financially destroyed by the Civil War. And Texas just happened to have wild, like, let loose cattle all over the place. Longhorn cattle, not a very good meat, but it had just kind of roamed free and kind of taken over Texas during the Civil War. So that when, you know, all the rest of the southern states, the Confederate states, were starving in the aftermath of the economic sanctions and the, you know, the damage of the Civil War, Texas just kind of stepped in and went, okay, well, we've got all this cattle lying around, so we're going to sell it to our neighbors at a premium. So, you know, and then from there, it was the opportunity of finding oil fields soon afterwards.
And selling the horns for everybody's cars.
Oh, yeah, afterwards. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Did I interrupt somebody?
No, Django had a really good point about horns. We should give him a couple.
I'm the interrupter, Jeff.
Take the floor.
Well, I'm just like, so we're at an hour. So just sort of thinking about this less an issue by issue basis, I'm just curious, sort of in a holistic volume sense, how did people feel about it? I felt like up until this point, volumes 1 through 3 kind of had the feeling of like strong, cohesive, like volumes in and of themselves, and I really liked this one. But having the world included in it means it was like a 4-issue arc, and it didn't have necessarily the same feeling of like I finished a volume or something. I'm not at all disparaging it, but it had a sort of different feel in terms of the flow of events. It makes me wonder, like maybe volume 4 and 5 are a larger sort of like 9-issue thing. But yeah, this volume to me had a kind of different flow than the others, and it maybe centered around the fact that now we're sort of following Babylon, like this child on an adventure, which is tonally very different than where we've been.
I mean, it could also just be, you know, I think every once in a while comic writers end up in a place where they're not really solid on how to get from A to B, and they can still be telling a good story, but it's not necessarily for the package that it ends up in.
Yeah, and he's just somebody who I do think puts a lot of emphasis in design, or like, you know, intentionality behind the package of the volume, or what issues are doing well. Like we know there's a crazy diagram somewhere, but
in trades, you think that's the case either with just like 5-issue arcs or something? I feel like he'd be a person who'd like break out of that and be like,
well,
no,
I know, like
design,
when I was rereading it, I actually could not remember where volume 4 was the ending, and I kept going, and I think I got to like issue 21 where I was like, oh, I should probably check to see where that ended, because it definitely, like, after I looked at it again, it was like, okay, this is where that ends. It felt like an interlude. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like we were getting some really important pieces of like moves of the players on the board, but nothing. I didn't feel like we had any big revelations about what was going on. Like, obviously, there was that moment with Jalin and Death.
Yeah, the killer
where
hope scene.
How much
where
does? Oh, sorry.
where they're you know, like, you know, it's they're becoming the message, and then also you know, apparently it's the last time they're going to see each other.
Yeah.
But didn't really feel like there was a huge amount like there was development, but there wasn't anything new on the board, I didn't feel like.
And he may be writing not for these 5-6 issue arcs. He may be, you know, this may just be part of the whole story. And
Right, and I think
Image said no when he wanted to put 9 issues in a trade.
Well, I don't think they got to. I mean,
Yeah, he gets to pick all that.
Image probably would have been like, that might not be a great idea.
Yeah.
Well, to Nathan's point, like he is kind of bucking the trend because these have been 5-issue arcs, whereas almost all Image paperbacks are 6-issue arcs. But Emily, you were going to say something.
That's kind of what I was curious about, because I know a lot of Image creators go on hiatus part of the year, and I was reading this one in trades and not single issues, so I'm not positive, but I mean that really lends to sort of that make it seem like a season, and then it goes in a trade more than other imprints. So that could just kind of be it.
So pretty much the way things work with Image is the creators drive that train. They say which track it's going to go on. For example, like that's why there's no second hardcover for Southern Bastards yet, because they didn't want the sales for volumes 3 and 4 in paperback to eat into the sales for the hardcover, which pains me deeply because I bought the first 2 in hardcover, so now I'm like, I don't.
It's like the best book coming out, and it's not coming out.
So yeah, but then as a example in reverse, where's my copy of Death Vigil? Up there, I'm not gonna grab it, but like Death Vigil, its volume 1 is like, I think it's 7 or 8 issues, and they like Image didn't say no to that. And personally, I think that's a great way for it to be packaged. It reads really well as the beginning of that story, and gosh, I need Stay Upon to like hurry up and like put out more of it. But
well, the book that we read last week, Ice Cream Man, puts out 4-issue arcs, and then they take a break. You know, so it is
sells it for more than issue price.
Yeah.
But it is interesting. Like this one just sort of, it didn't fit the mold that had been sort of preset. And I think it's probably the inclusion of the world being one of the 5 issues, and then that changing the flow of it at all. But it's interesting. I think that he's somebody who is more neurotic about consistency of output and type of output and format of output than most people. So and the flow of things. So this one is just, it's an interesting, it almost feels like 4 and 5 to me are going to be a sort of larger arc that got kind of divided in the middle.
I was excited to read this, just like I sat down and read it today. Like I didn't feel like I had to do a ton of digesting and rereading like some of the other issues. Which is kind of a nice break from the intensity of the previous, like the first 2 volumes for sure.
1 and 2 for
sure.
I
think what played into that was a lot of the stories were concentrated. We got a lot more, like we had 4 or 5 pages of the same story, and it didn't have a lot of jumping around between different locations and scenes at different times. It was it stayed a lot, like even the entire issue 19 was all about Babylon. The entire thing, nothing else. And so it definitely gives you a much different feeling versus, especially in the first volume, was constantly jumping all over the place, world building. And so we had, I would even say timeline wise, this seems to only take place like over a few days.
Well, we had one flashback, but that's one contained flashback, and everything else was just literally concurrent times.
It was very condensed.
And it was a pretty recent flashback too.
Yeah, because it was.
Just well, there was the flashback to when they put Babylon with the balloon.
Oh yeah.
But I guess I don't really count the first bit with telling us what happened to Texas as like a flashback. It just feels more like
that's an interlude. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it still happened between last volume and this volume.
Yeah, it's like, to me that felt more just like a, just off page. This is happening.
Montage.
Did
It's a
anyone read
montage.
this as single issues as it came out? Because for me, like, if I set this one down, I lose the plot. Like, it really
Can't even
lends toward
imagine.
binging.
Yeah, and I think I've mentioned this previously. Like when I was at a shop, we had like 5 or 6 subscribers to the issues, or might have been more like 10. But and like they all said like they just waited for the art to be done and then they binged the singles.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it was a very good volume. I did miss a scene of a bunch of people sitting around at a table talking about politics. That's apparently just my favorite Hickman thing in the world. So, you know, whether it's X-Men or East of West, give me more of it. But yeah,
Were there circles in this volume?
The world had a lot of circles.
There was a huge circle at the end of the timeline.
Yeah, the timeline is a flat circle.
Gritted circle of all.
Yeah. True. Yeah,
the
he gritted
adorable
his teeth and then put in a big pile of concentric circles.
Yeah.
I have 2 questions, short ones. When Xiaolin saw death coming from afar, right?
Oh, the
did
like hope on the
she
horizon.
Great
see him
line.
or feel him? What was their connection? Can she just see super far? Or is
my
that like
take on that was that she could see him.
She felt him with her eyes.
Okay, no los dos.
Like, I believe that is seeing, though.
I like patronizing Mike. That's
What
a good
is sight but feeling with your eyes?
Listen, it's not a lie. It's not quite a lie.
It's your technical lie. That's obviously what you're here for. My other question is, did Hickman kind of throw shade at Robert Frost? And if he did, why?
Because everybody misinterprets that poem.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
And I actually didn't even interpret Xiaolin as seeing death. I viewed that whole sequence as like just the metaphorical, like, that's not hope on the horizon. And I was thinking more about like the sequences of like war or, you know, resolution or anything like that.
And I guess I was reading that as death being the hope.
Right.
And then like the conversation that they have is all about like not all about hope, but like they come back to hope.
Right.
During their conversation.
She says, I think hope will be the death of us.
That seems pretty related to death. Yeah.
Our death. My death.
Puns.
When does Hope Summers show up?
Get it, Nathan. All right, listen, everybody.
Volume 9.
Final thoughts, anyone? Bring us home. Anybody want to do a group prayer as we get out of here? Break it down. Team chants, anything?
Om Nam Shivaya.
I'm probably gonna actually just plow ahead and read the rest of this hardcover volume 2, reread it, because like I said, like when I got to the end of volume 4, I didn't really realize that was the end of it, and I just I'm like halfway through volume 5 already, so I'm gonna
2 weeks between volumes for Jeff is not fast enough. I'm ready to just sort of like plow through 2 of these a week or something. But
well, so next week though, we're committed to Skyward Volume 1, which I really enjoyed when I read it.
I love that book.
I'm excited to reread it because I think everybody should pay special attention to kind of the story structure and the cliffhangers at the end of each issue, which I thought were really, really well done.
Yeah.
Anything else like that you can prep us for it? I don't have any context for that book at all. But I ordered it.
Gosh,
I think it's just like some of the best world building that comic books have done in the last like couple of years, because instead of I forget his name, because it's actually somebody who hadn't done a ton of stuff. They had done one other thing. There was like a TV show or a video game or something, but as far as I know,
I only read the first issue.
But what's the author?
Who's the writer?
Joe Henderson.
Yeah, or did he do the book The Great Pacific about the giant island of trash?
He was the showrunner for Netflix's Lucifer.
Yeah.
Is what it says on the back cover.
Yeah. But I think it's like really interesting, like world building. That was my favorite part of the whole narrative. Aside from like really caring about the protagonist, she's amazing, but there's just lots of really interesting storytelling about the world just shown in like small images in the background. Closest comparison I could draw would be Transmetropolitan, which I haven't finished, but just like so many ideas in this writer's head that they're just sort of coming out outside of the narrative, but just in the way that the world is portrayed. So I think that's a really exciting thing to look for as you're reading it.
Yeah. So next week,
same
bat time.
You did it, Django. We were all wondering if you were gonna did it, and you did it.
Just out of curiosity,
before I talk.
after this, are we going back to East of West, and then are
And
we ever going back to Middle West?
So I'm down to do like a volume 2 episode at some point of like, maybe Middle West volume 2 and Ice Cream Man volume 2. I picked up Middle
also
West
have the
volume 2.
question of, doesn't volume 3 of Middle West come out somewhat soon-ish, unknown because of things?
Yeah.
Nobody knows. Okay. I
Um,
know it was on FOC a couple weeks ago, I think. So
Yeah, it should be out pretty soon.
I'm definitely down to follow up on those ones. I'm particularly excited to get through East of West just because I think of the book club things that we've done, I think these discussions seem to be my favorite and the most sort of most input.
Especially since I heard somewhere that there's a thing this Wednesday.
New comics this Wednesday.
For the first time in forever. Yeah. There's a lot of not to be a pretentious jerk, but there's a lot of middle of the road comic books coming out this week, and I can't wait to read all of them. Just like new
podcast.
Pages. Oh yeah, we're gonna podcast it.
Are you gonna edit one?
I wanted to edit one this week that we recorded yesterday, and Django just kind of put that to bed pretty quick.
Nice. As he does with you often.
Well, there was just a couple times where it was like, oh, we're gonna extend this.
Yeah.
And
that's the circle back to your whole like cute relationship there.
Oh yeah, well we do. If we're not gonna kill each other, we're going to put each other to bed. Okay, well I can't wait to talk to all of you about East of West Volume 5. And if we've all read Volume 6 at that point, then fine, we'll talk about both. No pressure, just do your thing. But thank you all. Wynn, we missed you last week. It's nice to have you back. Thank you.
I have my new bookshelf.
Love it.
Jack Kirby is quoted as telling you the comics will break your heart. I'm here to tell you the comics will break your bookshelves.
Yeah, you and Justin both went through that in the last like 2 weeks.
It was like so weird. So like where I'm sitting right now, like right over here is where I work from home. Not gonna talk too much about that, but I was sitting here doing the thing that I get paid to do by, a mega corporation, and the shelf just fell. It just came down. Thankfully, like nothing of value was damaged. My paperback copy of Avengers Endless Wartime was the only thing, and it's totally still readable, and like who's looking to track down copies of that book?
Django will find them for you.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Well, it is fantastic to see you all. I look forward to talking to you all next week. Thank you all.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.